Have human psychology is a lot more social
Hey everybody, so thanks for coming today. This space, just briefly about it, this is Daybreak. It was started by New Bloom magazine 10 years ago during the Sun Farm movement. So we're originally an online publication that writes on social issues from a left-wing perspective in Taiwan, also politics, various things that occur here, etc. And eventually, a few years back, we decided it was worth opening a physical space to conduct community exchanges, try to create a sense of community. And so we do panels, talks, discussions, etc. And it's a volunteer-run space, so your support is appreciated. And I'll turn over to Tim, who organizes this event.
Hey everyone, I'm Tim Tia. I'm a Taiwanese American. I'm here studying Chinese right now. But previously in the US, I spent about 5 years as a union organizer and a union representative. And so one thing when I got to Taiwan, I wanted to learn as much as I could about Taiwanese unions. There are not a lot of English language resources on Taiwanese unions. So the purpose of this panel was just to try and hopefully let my curiosity serve to share what I've learned with other people. I'm glad to see that there's so many other people that are also interested in unions and the labor movement in Taiwan. So we've got a set of speakers, both Dr. Ho here, who's an academic, and then 3 labor organizers and activists to talk about their own work. I'll ask them some questions about the labor movement overall, and then open up some time for questions. So first, we're going to have Dr. Ho come up. Dr. Ming-Sho Ho is a professor of sociology at NTU with a focus on social movements and the sociology of labor. He's the author of Working Class Formations in Taiwan and Challenging Beijing's Mandate of Heaven. If I can just talk up his book for a second. Working Class Formations in Taiwan is maybe the only book on labor in English about Taiwan, about Taiwanese labor, and it's legitimately one of the best books on organized labor that I've read.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone. I didn't really expect such a crowd. I told him before, how many people are going to interested in class struggles in Taiwan? Okay, so we have a nice time. No, so all this credit goes to him. So I'm Ming-Sho. I have only 10 minutes. And after me, there are 3 practitioners. I think that you probably can learn more about what is happening on Taiwan's labor union, on labor front, from their first-hand experience. So what I'm going to do is just an overall review very quickly from a distance, because I'm based in academia. I'm not a worker on the first front. So the title is Decline and Rebirth of Taiwan's Labor Movement. So try to sound more uplifting. So we do have a rebirth. It's just not just decline. So
let's see what. There we go.
Okay. No, this is not.
Okay, second slide.
Sure. Okay. So first one, really, my understanding really started in the 80s. So Taiwan is pretty much like democratic country like South Africa, South Korea, Brazil, that we underwent democratization. At the same time, labor parties emerged. So we have a whole period that labor just rose in protest, and they have the same target with the democratic opposition. So that started from the 80s. At that time, we were in Taiwan, it's called 自主工会, Independent Labor Unionism. What independent means, independence from the ruling party, because of you know that Kuomintang used to have a very strong party-state regime. It's pretty much what you saw in communist China. So the party control everything. So the new unions actually, they are not politically independent, but they will say they were independent, meaning independence from the ruling party. So it's really starting in the 84. We had strike in the 88, because that 1 year previous, before that we just lifted the martial law that has been in place for 38 years. So the next spring, that was during the lunar calendar New Year, so workers protest for the annual bonus. That's the first strike wave. And a lot of organizing happened, and then we can be pressuring from 88 to 92. So next page. So there are some achievement, I think, if we compare to what happened 30 years ago and now. So a lot of legal protection have been implemented. There are a lot, I don't want to go into details. And previous to that, you have labor protection in book, but not in practice. So one of the main example is Labor Standard Act. That was enacted in 1984, not because Taiwan labor want that, but because the U.S. labor want that, because the Taiwan was running a huge deficit trade surplus against the U.S. So what the U.S. government tried to do is raise Taiwan's labor standard. So Taiwan workers got become the beneficiary indirectly, but that law only exists in books. So on the workplace, that law was never implemented. So with the labor process, and now the boss and the employer had to abide by the law. And following that, there are a lot of strengthening of the protection. I think that was remarkable because worldwide we see the bottom race to the bottom because they are intensified globalized competition. But whereas in Taiwan we see that actually labor protection is growing over the past 30 years. But at the same time, you will look at the 80s and 90s, there are a lot of ambitions. That was this kind of envisioned announced by labor leaders. For example, they were saying that, okay, we should organize a labor party, a working class party. And they have several attempts, but none of them were viable by now. And also, one of the issues is TCTU, Taiwan Confederation of Trade Unions. Because prior to that, there is only one national level federation. It's called Chinese Federation of Labor. And that is closely connected with the Kuomintang. It does not represent the rest of workers. So in the 90s, there was a movement to form an independent national level federation. And it was organized in 1998 and was legalized in year 2000. The TCTU. But right now, you look at TCTU, TCTU is pretty much fragmented. It does not, it even struggle to represent like independent labor unions. So it was one of the players, another most important player. But that kind of reality falls short of the vision when people will organize that in the 90s. So next week. And I would say that there's a turning point around year 2000. That's the time when Taiwan have the first peaceful transition of power. And by that time, you see actually the momentum of the first wave labor movement has been exhausted. So there are several indications I want to put it here. Like, for example, the two major parties here in Taiwan, the DPP and the Kuomintang, used to dominate labor leaders in the representative ticket. And so they do that since 92, the first time we have this proportional representative, and 95, 98, and then, but increasingly you see that people that were coming from the labor movement being nominated by both parties has declined. And there's in the year 2012, in that election, 0 who were nominated and elected by both parties. That really shows something. I think both parties were paying less attention to labor unions and labor movement. And the other indication is that we have a 10-year freeze with a minimum wage. Now in Taiwan it's called like 基本工资 standard wage, but it's a minimum wage. But 10-year freeze, meaning that there is no hike of that. But at the same time, we have inflation on everything. So you can understand the relative earning of labor just decline at the time. And also, I think there's another indication that 10 years ago, we had a sunflower movement, which involved a protest that occupied the legislature for 3 weeks. And the issue has to do with free trade agreement with China. So a lot of workers in the service industry will be impacted. But what it was happening 10 years ago was that labor union did not say anything about that. It's so weird because it's a labor issue. It's comparable to NAFTA because the trade agreement. It's a free trade agreement, but none of our labor movement or labor leaders say anything about that. Whether that event has evolved into a national crisis because the ruling party at that time was looking bad, so bad they cannot manage to handle this political crisis. And so many people were concerned about that. Actually, you look at that whole incident, there was some labor union, actually they said that, okay, we should support this free trade agreement, which is called cross-strait service trade agreement, okay, something like that. But at the same time, you see that what happening within the legislature and outside the legislature, many young workers joined the protest, and many of them like were coming from like social welfare industry, and also like medical students were joining the protest because the medical industry were among the industry that will open up for Chinese investment. So they feel the crisis, and also people from the publishing industry, social. So you see that there are young workers there, but the established labor just be very quiet. Next one. So actually there's a rebound. So this is the part I'm going to talk about, a reverse. It's not that obvious, but you look at the left-hand figure is the number of enterprise unions. Which used to call erroneously as industrial union. But right now, after the labor union law reform that was amended in 2010, but effective in 2011. So actually, there's a slight rebound. Can I?
It'll show up. There we go.
Okay, actually here, something here. There's a slide. This is a number of union, and this is the number of union member. Actually, is a rebound here. It's not that clear, but you see that from the 89, you have a straightforward decline. That is totally understandable because manufacturing sectors has used to be the concentration where labor union is. But over the past 30 years, we have industrial flight. So a lot of assembly have been relocated to mainland China or to Southeast Asia. So actually a lot of companies just vanish. So without company, there is no worker, there is no union. So the decline is understandable. But I want to point out that after the labor law reform, labor union law reform, there is actually a slight rebound here. Okay. So also with that, we do see a new struggles that starting in 2016, that's with the Chinese government. So we have a number of major strikes, especially in the transportation area. Like we have China Air flight attendant strike, China Airline pilot, FIA pilot, and the railroad worker, and so on. And also in 2016 and 2017 to 2018, we have protests involving with the Labor Standard Act. And the issue has to do with the shortening of working hours, the so-called one-day rest, one leave day and one rest day is so complicated. So the technicalities are which I won't talk about. But a lot of young people, again, that was interesting because young people were involved, students were involved, but not so much from labor union. And also, this is actually an interesting organizing effort happening during the COVID. It's from the hostage workers. So it's Ming-Sho Ho. Okay. So these are hostages. Because these are the industries that were directly affected by our COVID measure. Because our COVID measure, our commander at the time said that this kind of human-to-human contact is so contagious. So these are the industries that have been ordered to shut down first. And so a lot of people employed in that industry were affected. So that's why they started this unionizing and organizing effort, and all the way we see a lot of the effort right now they try to like destigmatizing these sex workers. So all this effort came from that moment. And also I think last year if you were in Taiwan, you pay attention to what happened there. A lot of Me Too issues emerged, and a lot of this incident took place in workplace. So it's kind of by extension labor rights. Next. So my conclusion is that if there is a rebound, as I said, I think probably is a unintended legacy of the Sunflower movement because young people kind of been awakened at that moment, and that seeds have been planted. Many of our partisans were students, but right now they were workers in different industries, different sectors. So along with this like new consciousness, I think they will more care about their rights as a worker. And also the second thing I want to mention that even though we have a rebound in the enterprise unions, and most of these new labor unions were actually in the service sector, like in education, in care industry, daycare industry, in medical industry. So it's not from the original center of manufacturing. So you see the post-industrial transition. But at the same time, I have to say, even there was a rebound in the labor unions movement, but I think a lot of politics happening outside of the labor politics or union politics, because the union, as it is now in Taiwan, is still not that responsive to the really concern, the daily concern of the young workers. And the final thing I want to mention that, is there a backlash? Could be, because one of the contending issue right now is like, for example, platform workers, food delivery workers, those food panda, those Uber Eats you see on the streets. A lot of these workers actually don't want to be covered by labor laws. They reject unionization because they see themselves as like they are their own boss. They can control everything. Like if they are being covered by labor law, they have to pay a lot, like for labor insurance and health insurance, and they don't like that. So this kind of freedom, like being a platform worker, I think could be source of backlash. The other backlash is that I'm working in academia, in school, so I know a lot of students who kind of right now is 反对绝经. Judging is workism, like you talk about labor, you talk about labor protection, you talk about like protection of minority, indigenous people. A lot of students actually don't like that. They think that you will over politicize everything. Like especially students in the engineering school, they think that they are the winners. They have good, better math than people who study social science and humanities. So they kind of feel that they are legitimate to earn more. So this kind of mentality, I think it's kind of could be a potential source of backlash. So I end my presentation here. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to learn the Chinese word for anti-wokeism. Jing, you'll see that in class soon. Next, we're going to have Kata Chow. Kata is a deputy secretary with the Taiwan Federation of Financial Unions, has been an activist with Taiwan Youth Labor 95, and is a member leader, actually the president of the non-for-profit union organization. Previously, okay.
Yeah. I can actually do it by myself, so if you want to sit down and, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that might be.
And I will also time myself, make sure I'm not using too much of the time. So, hi everyone. I didn't really expect that much crowd and also some of my friends. And as Tim has just mentioned, I'm Kata, because the Chinese name is always too confusing for the foreigners, so just skip it. And I'm just finding a way to. Yes. Okay. So
It's gone.
it's just 2 seconds. Okay. So it's a very harsh topic for the Friday night. And so since Professor already gave you some context of the history and the labor movement in Taiwan, I just simply jumped into the place I'm working in and then also the organizing I'm doing right now. Okay, so this is me. And this is my outline. I will introduce you 3 organizations. And the only one on the first top is the Taiwan Federation of Financial Unions, which is the job I was being paid. I'm right now still being paid to do the job. And the other 2 is kind of like a volunteer work. And the third one is a labor group, and I will introduce more. So this is me. I was previously working for a Citibank union. Right now, the Deputy Secretary General of Taiwan Federation of Financial Unions. So as you can already guess, it's a federation of financial unions in Taiwan. Okay. And before that, I was working for NGOs. So it was Awakening Foundation. Awakening Foundation is a feminist group. So they pretty much, want to do everything gender equality in the society. I was in charge of the gender equality in the workplace. And before that, I was working for an environmental group. It's called Homemakers United Foundation. Although it's united, but it's not really a union. It's more like an environmental group with a lot of housewives. So it was established after the martial law was lifted, and a group of housewives, they figured out that we need to save our planet. So they decided that they want to start up an environmental movement. Yeah. And right before that, I was in the school, in the university. It's Furen Catholic University. I studied English, so which is why I speak a little bit American accent English. And the reason why I began to join or get connected with social movement is because I joined this student club, which is used to be very concerned about the mainland issues, which is concerned about the things happening in China. And then gradually, after the martial law lifted, it becomes more like a student group that they are concerned about social issues. So that's where I begin to participate in social movement. So TFFU is Taiwan Federation of Financial Unions, so financial unions. And we have right now 37 affiliates and around like 65 members. And it was just as a professor have already mentioned, it was previously established in 1988. And it was because after the martial law, so workers are keen and eager to want to have unions, and one of them is the bank workers. So these people, they earn a lot of money, but they are not covered by the Labor Standard Act, meaning that their working hours can be super long, and their wages can be determined by the bank itself, and they cannot negotiate it. So the first thing they start up a union is they want to talk about their wages, and also like working hours. And if you were in Taiwan during the 1980s, you will know that there are actually a lot of bank robbing. So the workers are frightened to death. They don't want to die because of the robbing. So this is why the workers, they decided that they want to have a union. And after that in 2011, which Professor has also just mentioned, there was a law amendment. So the law amendment allows the unions to have more organizing. So we renamed ourselves as the financial unions. So it's not just the bank workers, but we also expand ourselves to the financial industry. So right now we have a lot of members from the banking and also from the financial holdings, insurance, stock exchange, and security, so pretty much the financial industry workers. And this is the one like I myself am the member and I was previously president. It's called non-profit, not-for-profit organization industrial union. And the reason why is, as you see that I was working for NGOs and I'm right now working for a union. I'm a secretary, so I'm paid to work in a union. And I found out that the workers who are working in the NGOs, like including union, they also need to be protected. So, which is why me and my friends, we established this NGO unions in general in 2018. And yeah, so the members are pretty much all the members who are working for the NGOs, like social workers who are, secretaries, advocates, organizers. So like our friends can also join the unions if they want to. And right now we have around 100 members. And what we did mostly is to help the workers to solve their cases. Like if they have a working dispute at their workplace, we will intervene and talk to their employers and let them know that this is not legal and you should do this and that. And the other thing is there's some regulations, restriction on the industrial unions. So it's actually really hard for us to do like bargaining or industrial actions, actually. So what we did is we do a lot of dialogues with the employers, like if they like to talk to us, and we try to help them to get at least abide by the Labor Standard Act. And one of the issues we were working really hard to push is that there's a governmental program that works with the NGOs. And it was actually previously because of the earthquake in Taiwan. So during that time, there are a lot of people because of the earthquake, so they have no job and they are homeless. And they need, like, for example, they need job, they need money to rebuild their home. So during that time, the government developed this program that if you help to, for example, clean up all the mess, I'll give you the money. So it's kind of like a government subsidies or government help money. So later on, this program gradually evolved in a way. It becomes a program that the government works with the NGOs and then send all these disadvantaged people to work in NGOs to get the subsidies from the government. But the problem is they are working in NGOs, so they are workers, supposedly. But according to the law in Taiwan, they are not workers. They are the ones who are being subsidized by the government. So they are not workers, they are not covered by the labor laws. So we work with an independent media to uncover this very unfair issue, but it's only in Chinese. So there's a QR code if you want to have a look. Yeah. So I got like 2.5 minutes with that. So the very last one I would like to introduce is Youth Labor Union 95, which is a labor group in Taiwan. We're not so big, but we are actually a little bit old. So remember, Professor had just mentioned about the wage stagnant in 1998 to 2006. So Youth Labor Union was actually established, well, not formally established, but we were there around like 2004. And the reason why it's called 95 is because during that time we want to raise the minimum wage from 66 to 95. But there's certain calculation thing, but I don't want to bother you, so don't bother with the number. But it's just during that time we want to raise the minimum wage. And the members of this union, not trade union, but union, are mostly youth laborers. So they are like the assistants in the school, or the college students who are doing a lot of part-time jobs to support themselves. So they're pretty much using the minimum wage. So they are the ones who are most influenced by the minimum wage. And that's why we have this organization to start advocating, saying that we need to raise our minimum wage. And in the end, the minimum wage was raised to 95 in 2007. So when we registered this organization, we want to memorize our success. So we named ourselves Youth Labor Union 95. Okay. Yeah. And gradually, well, to be honest, this is not a very strictly organized union or organization. So it's more like for example, Lennon is still also our members. So we are kind of like a adult club. So we do a lot of things besides our work. So we are concerned about social issues. We do a lot of protests, and we sometimes do some research, and we held press conference to point out the unfair stuff. And so we did a lot of things. So before that, when we talk about the minimum wage, we also talk about the part-time work. I know it's 10 minutes already, but 30 seconds more. And we talk about precarious work. And also, I was personally working in Australia for about a year. So we also talk about the working holiday things, like the young Taiwanese workers who go to Australia and being exploited, and pretty much because their language ability and because they are migrants. So we also talk about this kind of issues. And we also try to organize sales workers in the department stores. But it wasn't a very success story. If we have time, I can talk more. So there are just some pictures for you to reference. And yeah, 10 minutes and 35 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Tata. Next, we have Yang Shuwei, who is a Deputy Secretary General with the Taiwan Labor Front. The Taiwan Labor Front is described in Dr. Ho's book as, I believe the quote is something like, the most influential labor organization of the post-martial law era. And then we are going to have Kara come up and do some translation as well. Let me figure out what is the best way to display this. 所以你要自己就按旁边可以 OK。
Hello everybody, I'm Su Wei. I'm working in Taiwan Labor Front. Okay, just that's it. My English is not very well, so I need to cut out to help. 那我今天就是借由这个简报，想要跟大家分享一下，台湾劳工阵线这个组织，我们成立于1984年，是台湾硕果仅存，然后历史发展最悠久的劳工团体。
So I would like to have a very brief introduction about Taiwan Labor Front, this organization. It was established in 1984 and is probably one of the still active labor group in Taiwan.
那这是我的自我介绍，我念的是社工系，可是我对于台湾传统的社工这种直接服务不是很有兴趣，所以我在 2007年的时候到台湾劳工阵线实习，那我觉得对于制度的改革是比较有兴趣的。那我在2010年开始在劳政工作到现在。
So this is me, and I was actually studying social work, but I'm not a very typical social worker, so I decided I would like to try something different. So in 2007, I was doing internship in Taiwan Labor Front, and after that in 2010, I began my work here.
那这是劳政的 IG， 大家有兴趣可以扫描我们的
If you
IG。
like to, you can also follow their Instagram.
那我就进入到劳政的简介。刚刚Ming-Sho老师也有提到的，就是1984年成立的台湾劳工阵线，我们的前身叫做台湾劳工法律资源会，主要也是因为台湾那时候是戒严时期，不允许台湾的这种自主的工会运动或者是劳工运动的发展。
So Taiwan Labor Front is previously was a organization called Legal Supporting Association for Taiwan Laborers, and this is because Professor has already mentioned that there were martial laws in Taiwan. So during that time, workers, if they have problems at their workplace, they don't really have unions to support them and to solve the problem. So this organization is pretty much a labor group to help the workers to deal with their issues in the workplace.
那台湾的在戒严时期发展的一些社会运动有很特别的状况，就是当初成立的这一群人，他可能后来因为台湾解严之后，然后开放了所谓的党禁，所以这一群人他有很大一部分他就会进入到所谓的政治工作者里头去从事他另外一份职业发展。
Since we have this martial law, a very special social context in Taiwan, so after we lifted the martial law, there are a lot of organizers who were previously in this organization, and after the martial law, they join in the political area.
那也是因为有这一段的历史发展，所以台湾的社会运动团体，它可能跟一些特定的政党合作，也是因为有早期这一段的历史发展。
So if you get to know more about the groups in Taiwan, you might find out that there are a lot of activist groups. They are strongly connected with some politicians, and this is previously because of the martial law and all these people who join in the political area.
那劳政在第一波的转型是在1988年，因为1987年台湾这个解严之后，所以劳政那时候第一波的转型，除了就从早期的法律资源的服务之外，开始正式的走上街头。
So before the martial law was lifted, the organization serves more like a consultation group, so the workers who can come and ask questions and they can give some advice. But after the martial law was lifted in 1988, this group, they become more aggressive in a way, so they went on streets to do protests.
那时候主要的有一份在做的工作，就是在协助工会的自主化。那我们会觉得说，那在戒严时期，台湾是否有工会的存在？其实是有的，包括像是一些大型的民间的企业或是国营的工会，它其实都是有工会的存在。可是这些工会都是由党甚至是由企业所把持的。那在解严之后，劳政就试图协助劳工把工会的主导权拿回到劳工自己的手上。
So after the martial law is lifted, one of the jobs we do is we're trying to make the unions become more independent. By saying independent, meaning that because during that time, a lot of unions during the martial law, they are either supported by KMT, the government, or not very independent in many ways. And most of them are in the national-owned companies or the big companies.
下面这个就是劳政，我们从1984年创刊的杂志，叫做《劳动者》杂志。那它是持续的发刊到现在。我们看到是1988年那份杂志的时候，就把那一次的转型，如果用打仗做比喻的话，从早期的在做后勤的资源，开始正式的走上第一线的去做作战。
So you can see on the lower left, there is a cut of a publication. And this is a paper that is published by their organization, and they they say that the role of their organization is from supporting on the back, become they are fighting at the front line.
那接着台湾的另外一波很重要的民主事件，就是1992年的时候，台湾的第二届的立法委员全面的改选。
So, well, in Taiwan society, one of the big issue happened is that the re-election of all the legislators in the legislative yuan.
然后在那时候我们就发觉到说，以前传统可能在地方县市我们称为，我讲台语，条啊卡，这些条啊卡，它就是原本可能在地方的势力，它可以开始进军到国会，然后去影响到整个立法国家制度的这个发展。
So because of this election, so the local organizers who are usually organizing the the workers in the region, they found out that they have this political opportunity to join into the legislative yuan, so they began their participation in the election.
所以劳政那时候我们的口号就叫做集结劳工阵线，粉碎金权垄断，开始关注的不是传统的工会关注会员的权利而已，而是应该要关注的是国家的整体的制度的发展。
So Taiwan Labor Front, they have this slogan, well, to translate it in a very massive way, but is to organize the workers to strengthen their power and to break the monopolize of the government, of the nation.
Money politics.
Money politics, yeah.
劳政会虽然我们有几波的转型，可是我们还是都是站在一个比较大的一个使命，就是让台湾成为一个没有剥削的一个国家。
So there were some changes or shifted of this organization during the past few decades, but still the core idea is that we want to make sure that all workers are not being exploited in this society.
所以劳政我们在关注的一些议题，可能就不再只是局限于传统的劳动条件而已，而是在谈一些甚至是社会福利，比如说社会住宅、公共托育、长期照顾，那这也都是劳政在关心推动的一些政策。
So Taiwan Labor Front, they not just focusing on labor issues, but also on other things that is strongly connected to workers, like for example, social welfare, housing, or caring system, that kind of things.
劳政其实我们的3个很核心的价值就是政治民主、社会民主跟经济民主。
So there are 3 core of this organization: is political democracy, social democracy, and economic democracy.
我们会认为说，台湾目前已经有初步的政治民主，可是我们在谈社会民主更公平的分配，在谈经济民主如何把经济不是只是民主不再只是谈政治的部分，而是应该回归到整体的产业里头去做发展的这个部分。
So we know that in Taiwan we can vote, we have presidents, we have a rather good democracy in the political way. But still, we think that in terms of social democracy and economic democracy, we have a lot of things we need to improve.
台湾其实早期的我会觉得说，台湾早期第一波的工会自主化的这一群干部，他可能不是那么直接的想挑战所谓的资本主义，而是他在政治上启蒙之后，他觉得，我现在要推翻这个独裁的政权，可是我回到企业，我回到产业里头还是独裁，所以他可能想要打倒的是这种独裁的状况，而不是我们传统想象的劳工跟资本主义对抗的这个状况。
Well, traditionally we thought that workers who are struggling they must be anti-capitalism. But from my point of view, we know that the workers in Taiwan, they are not necessarily anti-capitalism. It's more about like they want to change their working or living situation. But as time goes by, these workers, they are gradually enlightened, and they found out that the point is that they don't want to be in such a not democracy society.
那劳政这几年，我们其实因为在非暴力抗争的这个理念之下，所以其实台湾的社会运动其实越来越没有那么的激进、那么的激烈，而是慢慢的走向日常的生活。那有些人可能称为这是一个机构化也好，或者是官僚化也好，可是这是台湾社会运动甚至劳工运动慢慢发展的这个状况。
Well, the recent years for Taiwan Labor Front, we don't do that much, like fight on the streets or, fighting against the government, against the police. We do more like, discussions, symposiums, and some people would say that will be like, less aggressive. But still, this is part of the democracy in Taiwan. So in the past, we have to physically fight for the democracy. But right now is that we have more spaces to talk and negotiate with each other.
特别是劳政，我们是一个倡议型组织，有时候我们在倡议的一些议题，可能社会大众都还不是那么的了解的时候，所以就必须要进行大量的社会沟通的这个部分，所以劳政就会举办很多的座谈会、研讨会，甚至跟政党举办公听会，去进行一些对话的空间。
And since right now, Taiwan Labor Front is more like an organization who do a lot of advocacy. So the things that we pointed out, what we raised, the issues we raise are maybe quite new for the public. So what we do is right now we do a lot of social dialogue. So we organize all kinds of events for people to join, and we discuss with people about like the things we want to point it out, and also make sure that the government is listening. So sometimes we work together with a political party or the government to hold some kind of hearings or discussion groups to gathering more information.
那当然还是会有一些传统的记者会，可是记者会可能就会透过一些像是行动剧，然后集结的方式去做一些吸引大众去注意的一个目光。
We still go on to the streets, but it's more like a press conference or a media action. So we do some, funny things on the streets and make sure that the media will cover this news and, spread the words around.
那劳政也是持续的透过青年的培力，然后我们举办相关比较柔性的这些活动，特别是透过出版的这个集结，我们参与台北国际书展，跟传统我们接触不到的这一群人有一些沟通对话的空间。
We also do a lot of like youth camp, so we have this kind of events and invite young people to join and get to learn more about us. And we also do a lot of publishment, so we have published a lot of books in Chinese, sorry. But yeah, we trying to elaborate and make sure the words are spread around.
那这是劳政的这个出版。那我觉得出版在台湾的社会运动，它其实扮演一个很重要的角色，特别是从以前在党外杂志的时候，其实就是透过党外杂志去突破政府的这些控制，然后去讲一些非主流的一些意见。
So these are the books that we publish, and I think writing books, doing publishment is very important. Like before we lifted the martial law, all the workers were the people who want to exchange their ideas through publishment, and they can make voice and spread the ideas around. So doing publishment is very important.
那劳政也会透过一些研究的报告，像是刚刚Ming-Sho老师也有提到外送人员的这部分。那劳政这一份是在台湾还没有针对外送人员做调查的时候，我们自己针对外送人员去做的一份劳动问卷的这个调查。
So we also do a lot of research, and we publish our reports to let people know our results of the research. And in the middle, it is about the platform workers. So this report is actually before the government. They found out this is a problem. They want to do research, and we began the survey on the platform workers.
那我们也试图透过这种新兴的媒介，包括像是我们的 YouTube 去介绍什么是工会，让社会大众了解工会的这个重要性。那我们也有录制这个 Podcast 的节目。
So as time goes by, media is very important. So we also try to do different things, not just the publishment, but so we do YouTube channel, and we also do podcasts.
那以上，谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you. Shui, and Kata. And so last, we have Lennon Wong. Lennon is the director of the Serve the People Association, which is a migrant worker-focused labor organization in Taoyuan. Would you like me to do it, or do you want to do it yourself?
So Lennon, well, actually SPA, my organization, works for both Taiwanese and migrant workers. So, well, anyway, so I'm heading I call it myself the Department of Policies of Migrant Workers. Anyway, so I'm a little bit younger, only a little younger than Ming-Sho. So I'm the second eldest among the 4 speakers. So my age gap can't explain that. I experienced most of what they, maybe Shui and Kata didn't see before. So, okay, but I can talk about it later. So I'm from NTU Anthropology, both BA and MA, and let's see the time. Okay, and then after my graduation, I worked in one of the biggest yellow union in Taiwan for 4 years, and then the first bank union for 7 years. And 10 years ago, I came back to our organization, that's the SPA, Serve the People Association. So I've been trying, oh, why is it like that? I'm sorry. Oh, it shouldn't be like that. But anyway, I didn't realize it's like that.
It's the projector or something.
Okay, anyway. So, okay, anyway, so I've been 20 years totally. So, yeah, in this field. I'm a member of 95. I even have been shortly the president of it before. So okay, so these are some, but why I wrote this, because these are relevant to my trail. Okay, I joined several clubs in NTU, the Labor Club, Humanitarian Club, Movies Club, Mainland Club, etc. Okay, Ming-Sho is my senior in Mainland Club. The full name is the Research Club of the Problem, Mainland Problem. Mainland means mainland China. Okay, that's one of the KMT clubs long before, but it was taken over by the dissident students later on, before me. Okay, so my backbone. Okay, some of my history. Well, I think this is more interesting. Why I am still here. Why I fall into the labor movement. I've been to participated in the labor club when I was in NTU from the first year. At that time, we often went to Taiwan Labor Front to volunteer. So my seniors, okay, some of them are scholars already, like Ming-Sho Ho, who is in Academia Sinica. He often led us to Taiwan Labor Front to participate. And at that time, they had a anti-high tuition fee movement. That's the second time of it. So anyway, we often went there. But then we are a very small group. They were. Oh, I'm really sorry. It's really a disaster.
I think if you take it out of presentation mode, you'll be able to see it.
Okay.
If you take it out of presentation.
That's good. That's better. Okay. So anyway, there were 3 major groups. In terms of the labor movement in Taiwan at that time. So Taiwan Labor Front was one of them, and it was a mass organization at that time. Okay, it is not now. It's like a think tank, a research center, and an advocacy group. At that time, they had several branches all over Taiwan. So it's really like a union. You can say that it's an unofficial union. And there was another Labor Rights Association. They have another name called China Tide. And now they have another name, the Labor Party. That's another one. And the third one is the Labor Legislation Action Committee. So that's the third. They use the name, they copy the name from the communist group in the Japanese period. Okay, so there were 3 major groups, but we are not any of them. But in my whole history, I know all of them, and I can say that I am. Taiwan Labor Front is the most open one for us. But at the same time, I know a lot of friends from the other 2 major groups too.
Just click down.
Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. Okay, so I just explained a little bit that after I graduated, and actually, when I was still in the college, in the master, for my master thesis, I volunteered in that's an NGO under Jesuit in the Holy Family Church. It's called the Redon Lugaron Center. Okay, it's a labor group. It's founded by a Jesuit priest long time ago, and they advocated a lot for any kind of workers in Taiwan, including the indigenous, the Taiwanese, and migrant workers. So I went there to volunteer. So every Sunday, at that time, every Sunday I went there to mingle with all the Filipino workers. They opened the whole day. So the Filipino workers, they went there to prepare the song for the mass, and they went to the mass, and then went back to the building to stay a whole day. And okay, and after that, I worked in the Chinese Federation of Labor. That is the only ITUC affiliate in Taiwan. Okay, ITUC stands for the International Trade Union Confederation. It was a merger of two major international big federations. Before, in my time actually, it was called International Confederation of Trade Unions, of Free Trade Unions, sorry. So ICFTU. So you see the free, so you can know that as US bloc, okay, that's against the communists. Okay. So and then I worked there for 4 years. At that time, the president was also a legislator from PSP, or the People First Party. So he just took me to the legislative yuan. So most of the time I worked there as an assistant there. And then in the 4th year, I resigned because something happened. Well, it's also worth to mention, but it's really a long history. Just to make it very, very short. At that time, there was a conflict between the staff and the president in Chunghwa Telecom Union. Okay, the Chunghwa Telecom Union, Zhang Xuzhong, who was a very famous union leader at that time, but he treated his staff very violently, and so the staff organized to fight against him, but they couldn't make a union because there were too few. There were only a few of them. Okay, so they call themselves as a anyway, it's like a committee something. So they publicized several statements against their president, their boss. So they wrote publicly against their boss, okay, on Kulao and other social medias. So I distributed that article to our members in CFL. So they fucked me, okay. They want CFL to apologize. So virtually, Chunghwa Telecom Union want their federation, CFL, to apologize because a bastard, me, did something wrong to destroy their reputation. So anyway, I moved to the First Bank Union, and I stayed there for 7 years. So I also understand how a financial union function. Still, and yeah, and 10 years ago, we were about to start the service center and shelter for migrant workers in SBA. So I decided to resign from the bank union and came back to our own group. Actually, SBA is founded by our small group. Okay, it's like a students group in only 20 years ago, and then along the history, we are older, of course, and all of us, we found a job either in the unions or later on we found SBA as our base. And so I came back to SBA to lead the migrants' works there. So until now it's already 10 years. Okay, a few minutes still. Some problems I want to raise in the labor movement as a whole in Taiwan. One is we don't have a very strong and progressive national federation. As I said, I worked in CFL before, but I won't speak anything for it. Okay, I know what it is. But what about the other one, the TCTU, or Taiwan Confederation of Trade Union? Well, honestly, it's almost as bad as CFL. Okay, it slowly developed as a club of the state enterprise unions, who only concerned about their own interests, and they don't organize at all. They don't reach out to the private sectors. Well, they have some private unions there, but they don't really reach out to them. they don't organize. In Taiwan, it's very typical that our unions don't organize. So it's very ridiculous. It's a very sharp contrast between Taiwan and Korea. We have very similar history. They had FKTU, the old one, just like our CFL, and then they have a KCTU, like something like our TCTU. TCTU like to boast themselves, we are like a KCTU, but no, it's totally not, because KCTU forced FKTU to move a little bit more progressive. But in Taiwan, TCTU became as bad as CFL or something like that. Okay. Another thing is, we don't have so many trade unions in the sense of like in the trade unions in North America or in Europe. Because of the long martial law, because of that, so most of the unions in Taiwan, I don't talk about a professional union, okay? Let's set it aside. Most of the unions we call are company unions. So they are usually small in size, and they are scattered. They don't have a general stance, like a whole working class, or even a whole industry. We had some trade unions just from some years ago. Okay, so it's just starting. It's very good that they are starting, but it's still very, if you compare to the numbers, to the company unions, it's still very, very small and still not strong enough. They are not strong enough to lead the movement, although they are starting. Okay. And migrant workers will be a very important factor in the future of the labor movement in Taiwan. We have about 800,000 now totally in Taiwan. It's not that big in number, but I believe that's super important because they are the one of the most vulnerable and the most disadvantaged in the most disadvantaged position. And if you talk about forced labor, it's so common to most of them. I can say bravely and openly, most of the migrant workers in Taiwan, they are in the condition of forced labor. So because of the due diligence law, I think you know from Europe and also some similar laws in UK and California. And so we are doing the best, trying to reveal the ugly parts about how the migrant workers are treated. And we want to push our government and employers to change. So that's what we do. Last year, we founded the first company union, a twin actually, with migrant workers. It's a company called ASCII Computer. They are a subsidiary of ASUS. So we made two unions with the same group of workers, which is ASCII Labor Union, or ALU, and the ASUS Group Labor Union, or AGLU. So this was our first protest in front of Guanghua Mall. That's a computer area in Taipei, to protest against. So one of the key demand was to refund the placement fee. Okay, but their anger was triggered by the heavy electricity bills. They just got all of them. They got the refund, and it was one of our General Assembly. We had a meeting in the airport, and that's after that. So that's it. Okay, so we still have a lot of obstacles. We don't have the limitation like in Malaysia or Thailand, which blocked the migrant workers from unionization. But still, they have a lot of difficulties. Their employment is not stable. They could be fired anytime. They can be deported anytime. Or in a less violent way, the employer can perfectly not to rehire them after this contract. So even they are not fired, it will be very difficult for the leaders to be rehired in the next, after this contract. So how to keep the leadership, how to make the union to grow, that's another big issue. And the last one, the ASCII, they are actually the company, they are moving the production to Vietnam. And I believe that's part of the tension between the U.S.-China trade war and the risk of war in Taiwan. And that's not the only case. Many companies, they are doing the same. So they produce a lot of unemployment in Taiwan for both Taiwanese and migrant workers. So yeah, I think I already finished more than that. Okay, that's my part. Thanks.
You could stay up. I think if we could have all the panelists come up now, and I'll do say like 25 minutes of questions that I have. And then I'll open it up for members in the audience to ask whatever questions they have. Do you want to sit? Do you want to stand? I think we can sit. Some of you touched on this a little bit in your presentations. So I don't know if we don't necessarily, I think, have to have every single person answer, but if you have a particular answer that you want to give, just ask for the microphone or you can grab the one there. So for everyone, what do you think are the biggest obstacles facing organized labor in Taiwan today, either for workers or the unions as institutions?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Hello. Okay. So I think I would like to first give more context to our friends, since I guess you guys are all English speaking, and you might have very little context about the unions in Taiwan. So I just mentioned to some of the audience before that after 2011, we amended the Labor Act, the Union Act, and we categorized the unions into three different types. So in the American context, all the unions are unions. They are industrial unions. They can have a lot of branches or other, caucus or different kinds of organized units. But in Taiwan, we have three different types of union. So one, like most of the people have mentioned, a union is the enterprise-based unions or corporate union. So this union is the most favorable or advantage according to the law, because the unions established, they have the rights to do the CBA, and the workers are being protected under the union law. And at the same time, they have a lot of benefits. Like for example, they have the paid official leave for the union presidents and other stuffs. And this is the corporate union or the enterprise-based union. And the second one is the industrial unions, which was finally named correctly after 2011. But the problem with the industrial unions is that they have a lot of problems in, for example, organizing and having CBA. So more than half of the workers in each factory join these industrial unions. Then the industrial unions have the rights to talk to the employer for CBA. So it's really hard for the unions to really organize each, for example, factory or company, since they have to have more than half the workers in their union to get started to negotiate. And the third one is the professional union, or the so-called, what's that called? Another name, professional union? Crafts unions, okay. So this is a special structure that is after the KMT government, correct me if I'm wrong. And this union is not really, most of the time it's not really a union, it's more like a, what do we say, broker? Or what was the word we were using?
Middleman.
Middleman. So they are the middleman union to help the workers to get covered by the labor insurance, and that's it. So they don't do CBA, they don't help the workers to negotiate or help them to solve the problems in the workplace. They are just the middleman for the labor insurance, and they get subsidies from the government. So most of the professional unions, they are not really the so-called union. So that's the context. And most of the time when we are trying to mention unions, is mostly enterprise-based union. So my union, the TFFU, Taiwan Federation of the Financial Unions, we are a federation of all these enterprise-based unions. So we are just like a collective of all these enterprise-based unions. And I think one of the problems is that as a federation, we only have 4 staff, like full-time paid staff. So it's really hard for us to do the so-called organizing work, because we have a lot of administrative work and other things we need to be done. So we don't really have the time saying that we're going to, like for example, a bank, in front of a bank and do the leaflets. No, we don't have the time, we don't have the manpower to do so. And the problem is that most of the dues are collected in the enterprise-based unions. So we don't really have that much money in the federal federation level. So it's really hard for us to do too much things. So what we can do is that we have tiny bit of human in the federation secretariat, and we trying to do little research. We're trying to organize some, like for example, social dialogue with the government and trying to talk to the employer, but it's still very, very hard because the structure is not industrialized. It's still enterprise-based. And most of the enterprise-based unions, they can be very conservative. If they're the workers, the members among the enterprise-based unions, they are happy, the union is happy. They don't want to do anything more than that. So the workers, they don't have this kind of collectively recognition of like, me as a workers, I want to help the other workers. No, they're happy in their own enterprise, and that's it. So I think this is one of the problems I would like to mention.
Is there anyone else that would like to answer that question? Biggest obstacles facing?
我觉得面对最大的一个困境是刚刚卡塔有讲到，可能是法规上面，然后目前发展的形态。我觉得整个台湾很特殊的一个政治背景，台湾人普遍对于左派、对于团结、对于劳工，其实是有一个很严重的刻板印象。
I think besides the things Kata has mentioned, which is a structural problem, I think another thing is because in generally, I think people have a like stigma against the left, like because of the martial law, because of the communists against China and that kind of thing. So under such a social context, people in general, they don't really support the left.
我举我自己的例子来讲哈，我念的是社工系，然后我毕业是2010年。在2010年的时候，你去问台湾的社工，你问他们是劳工吗？没有一个人会跟你说他是劳工。
So from my personal experience, like I was studying social worker, I just mentioned. So when I was graduated from the university, which was 2010, if you go on and ask the social workers, like, are you workers? Are you labor? They will say no, they are not. So they don't have this kind of recognition that they themselves, they are the workers.
那再回过头来看我们台湾的工会的这个发展，我们在1987年解严之后。原本是期待工会正要蓬勃自主发展的时候，可是我们看到的是1990年代军人的行政院长郝柏村上台，他第一件事情就是打压台湾的社会运动，包括台湾的劳工阶级发起的罢工行为。
Although we thought that after we lifted the martial law, it should be a good beginning, a good start, but still we found that the newly government is still not union friendly, like even suppress all the unions going on strike. So this is also suppressed from the government.
另外，同一个时间，台湾面临到的是我们的制造业开始大量的出走，所以原本的发展的这些工会，它可能变成是一个自救会，它只是要争取到它的资遣费或是基欠的工资。可是等到抗争结束之后，这些工会自然它就不会存在。
And also after martial law lifted, which was in the 1990s in Taiwan, and during that time there are a lot of manufacturing industry, the factories, they are moving offshore. So all these workers, they are going on strike or they are on struggle. This is actually the very last fight for them. So after the closure of the factory, they are gone. They are not workers, they are not unions anymore.
另外一个部分的话，发展健全的国营工会，它很快速的得到它应该要争取到，比如说会员的调薪相关的福利制度之后，它开始关注到的是它自身会员的权利，它对于整体的社会运动或是民主化的发展，几乎是已经要脱钩了。
So compared to the private sector, the public-owned companies, which is usually the public sector in a way, and they are mostly well organized, which is because during the social context, the government support the workers in the public-owned companies to establish a union. But anyway, so they organize and they are unionized and they talk to the government because they are public-owned companies. So they get a pay raise and they're happy. So they don't want to do more organizing, or They just want to improve the working condition in their own company. That's all.
而台湾对于工会自主发展的保护制度的杜绝不当劳动行为的机制，也是等到2011年才开始有相关制度的建立。早期雇主要开除一个工会干部，要瓦解一个工会是非常容易的一件事情。
And also the protection for the union activists is very, very little until 2011. So all kinds of unfair labor practice can happen. Like for example, you just simply fire the union member and that's it. So before 2011, there was no law protection for the union members. So it's very easy for the companies to simply suppress the union.
加上台湾是信赖所谓的新自由主义，所以大家都相信说只要经济发展，大家都可以活得更好。我只要努力，我就可以成功。所以对于团结的这种概念，其实也都不是非常的重视。
And I think the workers in Taiwan are strongly influenced by the neoliberalism ideology. So a lot of workers, they thought that if they work harder, they will get a better working condition, they will win a better life. But the fact is that the truth is not like this.
所以我觉得台湾整体的原本我们期待团结工会的这个力量，从一开始的发展，它就面临到很大的特殊的政治，然后经济的背景，加上法律制度保障的不健全，跟台湾人民普遍的信仰观念，造成是组织是非常困难的一件事情。
So from my point of view, I think there are some historical issues, like I mentioned before, about the martial law and the social context. And also there's legal structure issues, like Kata had mentioned. And I think there's also some kind of ideology, like workers in general, they don't think themselves as workers, and they don't have this kind of collective where we should fight together, that kind of ideology. Thank you.
Maybe I can say something. So I think I don't want to make it too long. I already mentioned a little bit that the unions in Taiwan, or many of the unions in Taiwan, they don't organize. So how can the labor movement grow when the unions don't organize? I think that's one thing. That's one very, very big thing. As a labor activist, of course, we know it's hard to organize. It's hard to convince the workers. It's hard to persuade them that you can win, they can win. But actually, if you say that, well, the workers are selfish, they are so shallow, it's the same anywhere, everywhere. It's not that different. If you go to the Philippines, if you go to Japan, go to America, it's not that different. As an activist, me at least, I think we should blame ourselves because we are not strong enough. We are not good enough. We are not capable enough. We should be more creative. We should have more ways. We should develop more tools to attract them, to believe us, to believe that we can win. I just went to U.S. to the Labor Notes conference a few months ago. It's a big shock for me because we are too used to the pessimism about the movement, about either social movement or labor movement. We are used to believe that, well, it's inevitable. It's almost impossible to move anything. Well, we can do that. It's already hard. But when I see there are thousands of very progressive labor activists in the venue, and that's only a small part of the U.S. labor activists, I was really shocked. Of course, I know the U.S. is much bigger than us. The population is several times than us. But even if you use the same ratio to count in Taiwan, we should have hundreds of us. But actually, how many we have? I would say honestly, only maybe 1,000 or 2,000, something like that. It's not too many. It's terribly, terribly small in number. So we should grow ourselves, and we should know more about the international laws, international conventions. We should know how to use those tools to push the government and employers. That's also what we are learning now. Yeah, thanks.
Maybe let me add a more pessimistic note here. I've been teaching in university more than 20 years, and this is one of the tricks I often use in my classroom. Because if you know Mandarin, labor union is gonghui. And actually, we have another word, gonghui. like it's like Association for Medical Doctors, 医师工会，工会 no. In Taiwanese it's 工会 very clear. But in Mandarin it's always confusing. I always ask students that when workers want to unite it, which are the form they use, they adopt, 工会 or 工会, you know. You gotta write that in Chinese character, you know that. So most of the time the students got confused. Okay. And the other example is that oftentimes I see the movie caption when they mention trade union, always translate it as like 贸易联盟, like commercial alliance, trade union. You know, people really don't have idea what trade union is. That can somehow reflect the low and public understanding
In the
of
games
trade
too.
union.
In the game they have union. They also translate that way.
Okay. So that reflects the reality that that labor union really does not occupy a significant presence in the public mind. And the last thing I'm also pessimistic about is that we are witnessing a trend that work is no longer our central identity due to a lot of development, because like people now can like freelancing for a while and do something different, and people can do slash workers, like 斜杠 have been like wild things among the young millennial generation. That they thought they are not permanently tied to a job, a position. So they thought that they have that fluidity. And even the platform workers, they don't think themselves are workers, they just do that on a part-time purpose, right? So we were witnessing a distanciation of work and identity. So that actually discourages people to associate with people they work together. They don't think their fate are going to tie together. So I'm witnessing that thing, that trend, and that is something that work against our identity, the very foundation, the keystone of labor. So on that note, I'm very pessimistic.
I'm going to ask what makes people hopeful later. This is something I thought of asking today. As an organizer myself, as an organizer myself, there's specific books on organizing and organizing theory that I draw on in my day-to-day work. Is there anything uniquely Taiwanese, or like for the organizers here, are there works on organizing and organizing theory that you draw on in your own work? And is there anything that's uniquely Taiwanese there?
Theories?
Yeah, but in my mind, I'm thinking of like rules for radicals, no shortcuts, sort of what I feel like are in the U.S. textbooks on organizing and union organizing. Is there something that's an equivalent in Taiwan?
Can I? Yeah. So I think there's not such a strict structure about like how to do the organizing, and there's ABC, the steps or the procedure. But I think most of the unions, they try to do is name and shame. So you pointed out what is the problem of the company, and then they direct them saying that this is the problem, and we union, we want to solve the problem, and you should join us. So that's one of the tactics. So when we were organizing the sales workers in the department stores, we're trying to do that. And this is because I think you guys are in Taiwan, so you experienced the typhoon last week, right? It was very serious, heavy rains and crazy winds and all that kinds of things. And right now, the regulations in Taiwan, they don't really protect the workers for them to avoid going to work during the typhoon days. It's only for the public workers. So as long as the government released a notice saying that the public workers don't need to go because of the typhoon tomorrow, and most of the private sectors, they will follow the direction of the government. But still, some, especially the service industry, they are not following the instruction of the government. So, like for example, if you during the typhoon days, you go to department stores, you will find out most of them are still open. And so imagine, like for the sales workers, if they want to open up the department store, they have to go to the store before you, like 2 hours or 3 hours before you. And that time might be the most heavy rain, the most heavy wind during that time. So that could be a very, very serious problem for the sales workers. So during that time, when we were trying to organize the sales workers, what we do is that we named all the department stores who do open up during the typhoon days. And we made it a press release to the press saying that all these department stores, they are neglecting all the safety for their workers. And after that, we started to do leafleting at the department stores to tell them that we are the one who are on the TV and saying that these companies, they don't care about you, so you should join a union. So this is how we began to organize the sales workers.
Would anyone else like to respond to that question?
在早期的时候，老郑我们有翻译一套公运丛书，那时候他是翻译国外的书籍，然后谈什么是抗争，如何的去做集结筹组工会，那甚至那时候也有在翻译所谓的非暴力抗争的这个路线相关的书籍。
So my organization, the Taiwan Labor Front, we do some translation and we do the publishment. That we translated some of the organizing books from abroad. So we teach people about how to do the action, how to organize a union, and also to spread the ideology of nonviolence. Nonviolence struggle. Yeah.
这几年的话，书籍可能会比较朝向工具性的这种书籍，比如说一个法令新通过之后，不当劳动行为机制或者劳动事件法诉讼的这些机制，然后用比较实务的方式去让工会了解到说我们怎样去运用这些新的法令。
And recently we do a lot of toolkits or tool books. So we want to help the workers in the unions to know about the newly established or amended law in labor issues and how they can actually use this law into their, for example, in the union, in the company, or on their workers.
近几年的话，可能就更偏向大家的这个偏好，使用 YouTube 影片的方式去做一些经验上的交流。
So to spread the message around, so we also do a YouTube channel. So the same content, but we use people to talk about it and introduce it online. So make sure that more and more people can get to know about the knowledge.
谢谢。
I have a few concepts. Through the years, we developed what Kata said. That's a very common way we use. My name is Shen. Of course, that's a very common way everyone uses in the world. But also, we are also learning that social dialogue and fair recruitment is what we are using now, and supply chain monitor. We force the brands to be responsible, be accountable for what happened in their suppliers. For example, they still let workers to pay a lot of money. They still take the passport of the workers. Okay, so something like this, we are still learning. But in general, I have more and more. I also believe that there's no impossibility. Well, the stronger you are in a union, the more you can gain. So don't limit yourself. Don't limit. So there is no absolute no. How much you can get it. It's actually it matters. It matters with how strong you are. Before I had some classes, I often told to share my concept about the law. The law actually reflects the struggle of the different groups, the different interest group in the society, and how it is actually reflects how strong they are. So, of course, you have to obey the law. You have to use the law, to use it as a tool. But if you don't like it, try to empower yourselves so we can be capable to change the law to the way we want. Okay, thanks.
So I have a question for Dr. Ho, and I think Lennon, you might have something to add to this as well. One thing I was really captivated by in your book is hearing about during democratization how labor activists specifically took, ran for and won union leadership positions in major unions to try and take power away from the KMT. That draws a lot of parallels in my mind with what in the US we call rank and file organizing, or the rank and file project or strategy. For folks who aren't familiar, there are union activists in, I think, UAW and the Teamsters, that's United Auto Workers, and the Teamsters, which does UPS, are both, like, historically have been notably corrupt unions, and people have spent years dedicated their lives towards like winning elected positions and unseating the leadership there. And we've seen, I think in some cases, really positive results, strikes with UAW recently, in other cases kind of disappointing results. The Teamster president recently spoke at a Republican convention. So I see a lot of similarities there with what happened during democratization and then the formation of the TCTU. Can you talk a little bit about that and what lessons you think that labor activists can draw from that in terms of achieving that success and maybe avoiding the downfalls of it?
Okay, so Tim, the question is about the grassroots initiative, how they retake the union machine, right? So it really sounds like an uplifting story that the rank and file worker can really take back the control of the union. That happened 30 years ago in Taiwan, and that happened in a special context. I think it's totally different from what you saw in the US, because you have to understand that during the martial law era, Taiwan is a party state rule. So in the 50s, the Kuomintang established party branching in almost all industry, major industry, private and public. And second step is that they try to build labor unions. And the labor union is actually the front of the party branch. And that the policy was so successful in all state-owned enterprises. And I have to remind you that in the 50s, Taiwan almost looked like a socialist state because all the major enterprise was colonial industry, and they were confiscated by the state. So the state had everything. So actually, we were more socialist than China in the 50s. And so in that context, the government just built party branch first, and the labor union second. And then we have privatization. We saw the growth of private industry in the 60s, in the 70s. So what happened is that in the 80s, the workers were so unhappy about the situation. And they were also labor union, except that the labor union at that time were also controlled by the party bosses at that time. So what happened is that they just used the democratic election, they vote their representative, and very quickly, just within less than 1 year of the lifting of martial law, a lot of labor union in the state-owned enterprise they can be lost of control. And the workers, representing the authentic voice of the rank and file, just take control. So it just collapsed. They just collapsed. And so it's so special because the labor union at that time was politically controlled. Whereas I think the corrupt labor union you mentioned in the US actually is not controlled by the state, right? So it's so different. But that happened in the process that I call the independent labor unionism. But I think that is so special in Taiwan. And what happened next is that, of course, this labor union become very active, militant, and pro-democracy for a while. But as Sue just said, especially for those in the state-owned enterprises, right now they only care about their interests only. They also inward-looking. They really don't care about other workers. So I think that might be a positive story just for a while, and especially in special context. Yeah.
So I think my follow-up to that, and this is where I think Lennon might want to chime in, or the TCTU kind of rode the same wave, right, of workers trying to use their unions to push for democratization. Lennon, you seem less than enthusiastic about the TCTU now. What do you think it would take for them to return to those roots? And what would you like to see them to focusing on in the future? I think that's any of you could answer that.
Inda said that TCTU is almost the same with CFL. CFL, I was so sad to hear he said that, and knowing that he worked for CFL. But I have to say that in the 90s there was so many hopes for CTTU because there was a coming together of independent labor unions, and they try to represent the alternative. They want voice on the national arena. So our labor policy structure is like is sort of cooperative, meaning that national labor has certain role to play in the decision-making process. But except that before the year 2000, the law was mobilized by CFL, which was totally unrepresentative of the workers. So there was a high hope that once labor can occupy the seat, the authentic voice from the shop floor can be redirected to the policy making. But what happened in 2000 was, of course, a disappointment. And so there are a lot of infighting, and the leadership was problematic. And right now, TCTU does not really try to, I think it's still different from CFL, because CFL is totally corrupt. But TCTU, well, we can say that they didn't fulfill the mission that was promised before. So, okay, I stop here.
Lennon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, okay, thanks. Well, a lot of things to say, but just make it short. That a few things that TCTU developed that way. Maybe there are two factors for the state enterprise became democratized. One is that they did the same along with the democratic movement, as Ming-Sho mentioned. Another thing, another trail is they were anti the liberalization, privatization. Okay, and that's the clearest for the financial sector. Our financial sector is one of the most unionized sector, in Taiwan, compared to many countries, many other countries. Why? Because most of the state enterprise banks, they were about to be privatized. So all of them, they organized to stop the privatization. And actually, this anti-privatization is also a common theme for almost all of the state enterprise unions. And a little bit earlier than that, along the what Ming-Sho just mentioned, how the Democratic Alliance took over the unions. Well, there's a term they call it labor side alliance or 劳方连线. So how they did a struggle. First, the workers, the activists, they need to learn the meeting rules, and they need to be very, very good on that. They try to speak, they try to boycott, they try to sabotage in the meetings, and also win the trust from the workers. But I think maybe something was missing at that time. It was very good that they did it, but maybe their ideology, their thoughts, is not built so strong at the same time. So very soon, after a few years, they still concerned about their rights and welfare in the union, but they don't really continue. So it looks that they just stood there. They don't move forward. So that's also what Kata described. Well, we can say that all the unions, especially the company unions, they have a tendency to be conservative, because the only thing they need to do is to satisfy their members, and actually it's not that hard to satisfy the members. Okay, if you are a very, very experienced leader, you know how to satisfy them. They don't talk about socialism. They don't talk about anything else. They just want their salary. So that's how it is. So maybe if you ask me how to, we can have a retrospective way how to make it better, how to make it better. Maybe we can have more thoughts, more discussion, more debates, more labor education at the same time, together when at the same time when they took over. So I really think, actually this is a common critique among many labor activists in Taiwan. I won't say, to clarify, I won't say TCTU is totally the same as corrupted as CFL, but I will say they are very similar in many ways. And this is really sad. It's really sad. I'm not saying this happily, okay? I have been one of the vice general secretary of TCTU for some time too. Okay? It's really sad. But we want to be different.
Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to cut to my last question and then open it up to the room. So my last question was, I'll kind of combine them. Looking towards the future of labor in Taiwan, what makes you hopeful?
So I personally, I am also sometimes serve as a mediator for the mediation meeting. So if you know, that is a administrative structure that if you have some kind of labor dispute, you don't really go directly to the court and sue your boss. So there is some kind of mediation process. So I'm the mediator who do the mediation meeting. And I found out that compared to the time when I was still in the college, and right now we see a lot of workers who apply for the mediation meeting, I found out that a lot of workers, they actually know their rights. So compared to what we mentioned about like people don't really know about the unions, or they don't have the concept about like, organizing or bargaining, that kind of things. I think from what I see, the people who are applying for mediation meetings, they are actually, the numbers is growing. And they know that they have their rights, like minimum wage, the working hours, the labor insurance, the health insurance, blah, blah, blah. They know their rights. But the problem is, the more the people know their rights, they will tend to put it in an individual way. So they just solve their own problem. So they know the law, they can either sue the company, sue the boss, or they can go through the mediation meeting and ask demanding their rights, like their back pay or blah, blah, blah. So if we have more and more workers who know their rights, but they don't organize, they simply just solve their own problem. They get their overtime pay, but they don't figure out that this is a structural problem. I think this is in a way I'm pessimistic, because there are more and more workers know their own rights. But one of the pessimistic part is that they only figure out this is their own problem and they only want to solve their problems by themselves, and that's it. So, well, I think what we can do, as then Mike had already mentioned, that we can do more is that we want to build this kind of collective, like the things that you cannot be done by yourself, you can also ask the unions for help. And the ideology of having these kind of collective bargaining or collective action is actually very important. Yeah.
Dr. Ho, would it, or should whoever wants.
Yeah, I think Kata is right that you see increasingly awareness of the rights, that people are not suffering. They are not going to, like my parent generation probably will take this suffering and without expressing it, and so it's probably they allowed or something, say nothing in the hope things will do better by their own, but actually don't usually do that way. I can second his observation that I was a director for a certain research institute until last year, so I had to supervise 18 workers. So I kind of am in an employer position. So I can, being a manager, I know that a lot of staff have this kind of understanding. So I was brought to a mediation dispute mechanism, even though the worker is so problematic. I have to let her go. But anyway, she apparently had this kind of awareness that there are multiple channels that she can use. But eventually she lost the case. Anyway, but this is just an indication that happened to my personal experience, that even problematic worker, can I say that? Okay. Do know that they have certain channel they can address.
我觉得这个其实是蛮困难的，可是我们去看台湾这几年的变化，其实大家对于自己的劳动意识，然后对于社会运动的关注，特别是2014年的太文化运动之后，大家开始会关注一些社会议题。可是我们的抗争常常都是倾向于个人的抗争，它不是集体的这个抗争。所以下一步如何把这个对于个人意识的这个觉醒转换为大家一起共同团结，我觉得可能会才是下一步应该要走的方向。
I'm not so optimistic. In terms of what I see in the past, like we know that there are some labor issues or incidents happening on, and also the sunflower movement in 2014. So there were a lot of people who go on the streets and who do the struggles. But the problem is, most of these struggles, they are not reflecting onto in a collective way. So it's mostly an individual who joined the movement, but after that they don't really bring these things into a collective solution. So I think in the near future, what we need to do, this is our homework, that we need to figure out like how we can make all these social issues to become a more collective solution.
Okay, so if you say some final words, I think for me as a when I'm focusing on migrant workers now, so as I mentioned earlier, I do believe the future of the labor movement in Taiwan lies from the migrant workers, from the heavy exploitation and abuse among the migrant workers. So our job is to help them to be liberalized, to take out the chains that's on them, and to unionize, to fight against this inhuman system, and to really make a more sustainable and humane way for all the migrant workers who should be able to become citizens in Taiwan. And there's still a very, very long way to go. But at the same time, I also believe we can not only limit ourselves only within the migrant workers, but we have to mingle with the local unions as well. So this is what we are going to do. My view have been changed a little bit. I think we still need to unite both the Taiwanese and migrant workers together to win. So okay, a few final words. Beatles said, and in the end, the love you get is equal to the love you made. So I believe the efforts we made won't be wasted. We will see the fruits. We will win. Thank you very much.
We can open it up for questions now, but I thought Lennon's name is Lennon, not Lenin. I think that makes sense.
So give me the other mic.
Questions in the audience?
Do you want me to talk about the unionisation that we did in my workplace now or a bit later?
I think that'd be great now.
Yeah, all right. I don't actually usually use one of these very much. Can everybody at the back hear me okay? Yeah, right. I see English teaching has some useful skills. Yeah, my name is Jeremy. Can I just briefly ask how many of you are English teachers? Anybody? My God, nobody. Not a single white person in this room is an English teacher. Unbelievable.
I might be.
You might be, a little bit. Okay. So yeah, as you know, there are quite a lot of foreigners here who teach English. I'm sure you know some, even if you're not yourselves one of them. And I'm a long-term resident in Taiwan. I work for the British Council. And while I certainly don't want to compare the struggles of largely white, male, privileged English teachers in Taiwan to some of the stuff that Lennon works with, we have had problems with management. We're mostly pretty well paid, at least our full-timers, but we have a lot of part-timers who are not so well paid. And at the beginning of last year, after maybe 10 years of using our rather toothless Teachers Association to get change, we tried to form a union. We got help from the Taiwan Higher Education Union, who I'm sure these people know, and we formed a branch of that union last year. Now, since that time, we've been working to put pressure on management. We went through the mediation procedure that you mentioned, which lasted for 6 months and was mostly management stalling. Now, we are internationally organised. Our head office is in the UK, so it's a little bit different situation maybe than working locally. But yeah, management stalled for 6 months. And we still haven't got much movement on our main issue, which was pay, at least officially. Although management announced a 3% non-consolidated pay rise by coincidence, not long after we started the union thing. But that's just a little bit of the background. But mainly what I wanted to say was that our experience matches quite well with some of the things that they said. One of the disappointing things is that our union is mostly the teachers. We do have 1 or 2 local staff, but it's been very difficult to persuade local staff to join the union. However, overall union protection has been quite good. Labour law in Taiwan is surprisingly strong for a country with its history, and as you said, especially compared to many of the other countries in Asia. So we've got a lot of support, and we're well aware of the protections that are available for us. And yeah, in fact, the kind of organisation, we've had a lot of help from the THEU, who've been fantastic in supporting us. But the whole sort of organisation thing has gone really quite smoothly. And I think it's worth noting that the union has been quite effective. As you might or might not be aware, the English teaching industry here is pretty shoddy. It exploits a lot of basically young, inexperienced people who come to Taiwan, don't really know the labour laws, get a reasonable wage, but are often expected to work weird hours, lose benefits, don't get their holiday, a lot of different stuff. Now, my organisation is not quite as bad as that, but one of the things that came out of the union work was finding out a whole bunch of labour regulations around part-time work, holiday pay, sick pay for part-timers that our company had not been obeying. And now, suddenly now that the union had got involved and we said, you know, we're going to take you to the Labour Office, Department of Labour Affairs, right? All of a sudden, all of these things cleared up in the space of 6 months. So people were getting like 30,000 NT worth of holiday back pay. Our young learner assistants, the kind of people that you work, who are students, young people who work and help with the children on minimum wage, they weren't getting their sick pay or their holiday pay, and now I heard from our organiser that just this month they got their first holiday pay. So I think the thing to say is that unions work. We forced the whole organisation to clean up its act, and another parallel that struck me while you were talking is that I know that lots of English teachers have had occasions where they do know their rights, they talk to their employer refuses to do anything, right up until basically the steps of the Department of Labour Affairs, and they come prepared with the money that's owed, and when they see that the employee is serious, they go up to the steps, they hand up over the envelope, and then they walk off, right? Because they know they're going to get busted. But that happens individual by individual, But here, we've managed to force the entire organisation to start treating its local and foreign staff in line with the law, and I think that's a major achievement. And it speaks highly of Taiwan's labour law that was possible. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Questions? Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Just wanted to ask a question that was in line with migrant workers being the future of unions. So then, I guess, are there any, like-minded democracies in the region that can, unions, migrant worker unions can draw inspiration from? You mentioned South Korea earlier. Singapore has like 1.5 million migrant workers. Hong Kong has 400,000. I think Taiwan, we're close to 700,000 now. Are there any case studies that these unions can draw inspiration from mobilizing from a grassroots level, or legislators can get inspiration for social policy to remove obstacles for these migrant worker unions to thrive? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I just have a quick response. Well, actually, we know that in Asia, most of the countries, they have different kinds of bans. They really, some of them they just banned migrants from unionizing. But luckily, we don't have it now. So Korea is another example. The KCTU, they support MTU, or the Migrant Workers Trade Union, but the government, they still want to bust it. Okay, is to try to appeal the case. But anyway, what I see is we support everyone, and we are in an alliance, in International Migrants Alliance, or IMA. This is a grassroots organization for migrant workers and all the displaced peoples, including the refugees. So we're part of it. But it's not that strong. To be honest, it's not. It's more like a movement group. It's not really something we can rely on. But at the same time, we are preparing to organize into an alliance of trade unions and maybe affiliate to industrial That's one of the global union federation. Okay, that's a very powerful trade union in the world. So just like education, maybe I think higher education they can affiliate to EI, Education International. That's the international trade union. So if we can have a union to affiliate to the industrial, actually they have a few affiliates in Taiwan. But anyway, if we are part of it, I think it could be stronger. At the same time, we also try to mobilize the migrant workers in different sectors and nationalities. And we also have some interaction with the migrant workers in other countries. So together, we need to organize a unionize. But at the end, the last word is Taiwan is one of the forefront of unionization for migrant workers, and we really need to move on. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the panel and also for your share. I'm hugely inspired by white-collar worker organizing. I'm always afraid that as white-collar workers, we get some privileges and it's essentially being paid to shut up. So I think it's wonderful what you've all done. My question is also about some of my experiences with labor organizing are outside of Taiwan, but some of the tensions I have felt is oftentimes there's like some kind of like paid organizer who's often college educated and has like hopes for systemic change, and then there are these like we have to organize the rank and file who have kind of self-interest. I'm wondering in your work, how do you bridge the self-interest for deeper systemic reform?
I'll let you all answer that first. I might also have an answer for that.
Sorry, may I clarify? So you asked the activists, the organizers who got paid, right? The contradiction between them and the rank and file workers. That's what you asked.
I think I'm just voicing some tensions that I felt in my work. Like sometimes there was like the college-educated activist type, and then there were the rank and file, like blue-collar workers. And then how do you bridge that? How do you bridge the self-interest with the deeper systemic change?
Maybe I can say something first. Okay, 看到你这样了。
Sorry, my voice is done. I think as a well-educated university student, and I didn't finish my degree, but anyway. So I think the point of doing union organizing is that you have to understand what is the worker is doing. So it's not really like you are how well-educated. It's more about like how you are professional in such an industry. Well, if you say in terms of financial industry, it doesn't really happen because most of the financial workers, they are white-collar workers, they are well-educated, so it's fine. But the problem is if you don't know what financial industry they are doing, it will be really hard for you to talk to the workers. Like they think you're not professional. You don't know what I'm doing, and you don't know why there's the struggle. So you have to learn more about the industry itself, and you have to know what is the problem among the workers. So it's not just like, I'm a well-educated university student, I'm going to liberalize you guys and help you guys, not that kind of, up and down thing. But it's more about like how you can, you are willing to embrace what they are doing and get to learn and know more about what they are doing and what is their struggle. Yeah, just a very short one.
Yes, okay, and supplement on that. I agree on that. But also that the paid organizer that you know in US is totally a different story in Taiwan. Okay, like us, when we started to organize, I'm not saying myself, okay, I got to pay, okay, from the beginning. I'm luckier than my other friends. But traditionally in Taiwan, if you organize, there's no salary at all. Or it's super terribly low salary. But yet, another part of your question, the tension between you can say academic-based activists and the workers, it exists. This contradiction really existed there for a very long time. And some, I will say frankly, some corrupted leaders, some corrupted and, they have a saying that, don't trust those activists. Okay, there's a saying among the union leaders in Taiwan. They like to say, labor movement is not union. Union is not labor movement. These two are different. Don't trust those labor activists who want to lead your organization in a way. Okay, so this is a very terrible warning. This kind of ideology, they use this kind of ideology to limit themselves. They don't want to develop. They want to focus only in their job. They think anything else is politics. Oh, they said this way because they want to lead you to the party. So actually, but still, many people they buy that. So well, that's part of the struggle in the labor movement in Taiwan.
I actually want to answer this one because I'm one of those college-educated organizers. You know, I came out of SEIU with Service Employees International Union, which makes, I think, a deliberate policy of hiring young, idealistic college graduates to do their organizing. And I think that contradiction that you feel is definitely real, right? Like, when I'm working as an organizer, my paycheck is coming out of the union, and as much as we say that we are there specifically for the worker, right? Like, that worker or that group of workers doesn't dictate our day-to-day. And I think it's on, I hope that most organizers like myself are like aware of that contradiction and are kind of struggle with it, right? I think that the other avenue for labor activists, and probably the harder and more meaningful one, is people who take a union position and like struggle with the member wages and struggle for years to try and take leadership positions there. You know, I think in my own work, I try and just think about sort of that my loyalty is not specifically to this union, but to a larger project, and to try and balance that. And I think that there are compromises that people have to make when they're doing that organizing, and you know, probably some of there are times you're asked to sell something that is the campaign decision, and sometimes that thing you're asked to sell, you don't believe in. And I think it's always a struggle for organizers to like figure out where they draw that line. I think we have one more question. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I just learned that the financial sector in Taiwan has quite high representation in the union, given its history of privatization. So what would be the industry or sector that has the most representation in the unions? And does it make sense to separate, categorize within the sector and industry? And then going on, what percentage of labor force in Taiwan are in manufacturing industry, and which percentage of them are migrants?
Just a very quick response. So in terms of like financial industry is one of the most well-organized sector. This is because of the historical issues I mentioned before. And let's say this way, the most well-organized is actually among the finance sector is the banking industry. So there are 38 banks in Taiwan, and there are 26 unions among them. And many of them actually have CBA, so we are, in a way, well-organized. And the other well-organized sector is the teachers. So like one of the helping them is the Taiwan Higher Education Industry Union, and there is also a federation of the teachers unions. And I think they have around like 800,000 people, something. So they are a little bit bigger than us. And well, again, that's another social context. Like the teachers in Taiwan, they actually cannot go on strike. And before that, they don't really have the rights to form a union. They can only form an association. So because of this context, so when the time, also in 2011, when the Union Act is amended, the teachers, they really appreciate that right now they finally can start up a union. So the unions are started up during that time, and they figure out they need to work collectively, because they are mostly in the public schools. So the teachers are well organized. So if you say in Taiwan's context, the most well organized industry is the education industry and the financial industry. Yeah.
And the next question was
the numbers.
What percentage of the labor force are in manufacturing?
I don't really know in each sector, but I know that in general, like the unionized rate in Taiwan is around like 7% or 8% in general. Yes.
Like 11 million workers enrolled in labor insurance. That can count as a base. And out of that, around 3 million workers in the manufacturing.
And do we have statistics how many of the manufacturing are migrant workers?
So the migrant workers totally there are 800,000.
Ah,
And that's manufacturing almost 500,000. So you asked about the most unionized. Well, other than the teachers and the banking industry, I would say state enterprise companies, they are 100% unionized because they are all those unions were made by KMT long before.
I think we're going to close out for the night. I'm going to try and give some inspirational comments. I want to thank all the panelists for coming. One thing that I thought a lot about talking to these organizers here is like all of the specific structure of Taiwanese unions, right? Like that's new to me, and I think it's new to a lot of us. But the underlying thing of how workers build power and make change, right? Whether that's in Taiwan with the legal structures here, or in the U.S., or in Europe where you have industry unions. I'm forgetting the word. Sectoral bargaining, things like that, right? The underlying root of like how you build power and how you make change, I think that's the same. And I think looking through other countries for international examples and seeing how different they can be, to me, brings me back to the root of like building that power, making that change. So an injury to one is an injury to all. Solidarity forever. All right, have a good night.
Have a drink and talk and get to know each other, or talk to panelists, all year round. So thanks for coming. And if you could bring your glass upstairs, that'd be very appreciated.